Welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm, having a successful accounting, bookkeeping, and tax business. I'm Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center, and your host. The purpose of this podcast is actually to help accounting professionals confidently and competently offer quality accounting services to get paid what they are worth. Listening to this episode and our other episodes is something that I would encourage you to do. So take a moment to subscribe to this podcast and listen to the other episodes that are available to assist you in this effort to help you build the premier accounting firm in your area. Now, with regards to myself, Roger Knecht, I am president of Universal Accounting Center, and I've been working for more than 20 years helping accounting professionals start and build successful accounting businesses. This podcast, as a show, is dedicated to helping these people, yourselves, offer quality accounting services with confidence and competence, which is to say that you're able to focus on each of these episodes in basically listening to the tips and tricks to help you apply the principles of MAP in your business to help you start and build successful businesses. With regards to the topics, we're covering a variety of things such as marketing, lead generation, ideal clients, pricing strategies, accounting services, value-added services, workflow, all the things that you may be considering as to what you can be doing to work on your business and, in fact, build the premier accounting firm in your area. So with all that in mind, I want to welcome Chris Farrell. Chris happens to be the CEO of Liscio. Liscio is a software company that develops client experience software for accountants. Prior to Liscio, Chris actually served as the CFO of a NASDAQ-listed company and as an auditor for Arthur Andersen. He earned his MBA at UCLA. His CPA license is in California, and he currently lives with his wife and son in San Francisco, California. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Roger. Great to be here. As you know, big fan of yours and love everything you're doing to improve the profession.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, this is going to be fun. I always enjoy the conversations we have, and I believe our listeners just like delving into some of the tips and tricks that people have as to what they would like to maybe share to the industry. So let's kind of just dive into your background. I'm always excited to hear people share their stories as to how they got into the accounting profession. So what can you share with us about that?
Sure. Let's delve. I grew up in the family business with my mom. And we lived with my grandparents at the time, and my grandma did the books. So I remember, being around the kitchen table, and she enjoyed doing that tremendously. So I was around bookkeeping from an early age, and things really changed though when I was a teenager. I got a chance to fly to Hong Kong to really meet my dad, and I hadn't spent much time with him in my life, and I'd never left the country before, so it was pretty much a big deal at that point, a big solo flight. So I get there, and my dad has this wonderful building, or wonderful office in this building with this massive view of Victoria Harbor. Things were really going well for him at the time, and he was busy working. He didn't have a whole lot of time to spend with me during the day, so he just handed me a bunch of Hong Kong dollars and cut me loose on the city. I definitely didn't tell my mom about that, but that's another story. But the next time I visited, I was halfway through college, and I flew back to see my dad again, and he didn't have a business anymore. So I get there, and he's literally living out of a hotel. And we ended up touring the city together a bit. And one night, he took me to dinner outside of the city. And it was just a little casual seafood joint where, you go and walk these vendor stalls, and you pick your fish. And they put a tag on it. And they send it to whatever restaurant you're going to be eating at that night. And so everything's along the shoreline. It's pretty fabulous, pretty casual. So anyway, we finished this dinner, and we're on our way home back to the hotel in a taxi cab. And on the way, he points out the window and he says, "You see that building? Oh, I can see where lights and kind of a cement facade." He said, "That's a jail." And he said, "You know who's in there? My old business partners." And what had happened was his partners embezzled all of the money from the company, just disappeared. They got caught and they got thrown in jail, but the money was gone. And at that point, I guess you could say that he began strongly suggesting to me that I get a quality education in the field of accounting. And he also said, "Hey, when you get down like this, turn on the Eagles, put it on Take It to the Limit one more time, and that'll help you get through some tough days." So that was my Hong Kong trip, and that was pretty formative.
So when you're describing this, for those people that haven't traveled, I'm sure as a teenager going there to meet your father, that was probably a daunting experience to go internationally and go into this other culture. But then as a young adult, you going there and seeing your father, it appears to really have his life in kind of a state of turmoil. And he'd been basically betrayed, if I use that word, by his co-partners in the business. There's a lot of emotion going on in there. And being young as you were, what did you think of all this trial, tribulation that your father was experiencing as he was going through this challenge in his life?
It was tough to see. My dad was just a raging optimist, always reaching for the next big thing, always seeing the good in everything around him, the good in people, the good in business, the good in creating things. I think he just loved the act of creation, right? It's very stimulating. And I think, for the audience, right, mostly business owners, there's a lot of great things that come of it. And I think for him, I think the most disappointing part was to really put so much in. To the creation process, but not really know how a business is run, what a really solid foundation looks like, and what good internal controls look like, and so forth. Mm-hmm. And have all that just kind of disappear in the snap of a finger, the blink of an eye. That was pretty tough to see. So, when I got my first job as an auditor at Arthur Andersen, it had a little more meaning. So, I think studying auditing classes, learning things from a book, that's one thing. But then seeing the human aspects is an entirely different facet. And it was tough to see, but also, it gave me a lot more meaning in my career.
Well, from an accounting perspective, just looking at it through the lens of the profession, I think when we're working with our small business clients, there's a great deal of trust that they have with people that they start and build their businesses. And as an accountant coming into that, we're able to provide hopefully some assurances that the monies are actually being used properly and help them avoid what your father experienced. Because through the accounting, it's if you're looking at the numbers, at least it's telling a story, and you can start to see cracks and fissures in the accounting model if there's that embezzling and that fraud going on. And as an auditor, I'm sure got to go into it from a personal point of view and really take serious what you were actually doing, because you saw the impact of it just within your own family. So I think that story that you shared was hugely important, because we have a role to play as an accounting profession. And when we're working with our clients, we have to realize that this can be one of those outcomes if we don't do our part as accounting professionals to help kind of fill in those gaps. So you went from that into accounting. Were you already interested in going into the accounting profession at that point in your life, or was this something as a catalyst to move you that way?
Definitely a catalyst. My grandfather was in the military. He was in the Navy, World War II, and so forth. And I grew up in a military household with the notion that I was going to go maybe go to Annapolis and go in that direction. And being around business with my mom and so forth was really good too. So I thought maybe I could have a military career, then have my own business. And then all this happened, and my dad kind of showed me the world through a different lens. Seeing outside of my hometown. We just didn't travel when I was a kid. So, he talked me into, and the family talked me into getting an accounting degree and seeing where that led, with the notion that I could always have a business later. And they were, I guess you'd say, there was definitely tension in my family of which way to go. But it was between, really the accounting career and the military, and the accounting career side won at that time.
So you get into accounting, you get your degree, you work for Arthur Andersen. What happened after Arthur Andersen? Where did you go from there?
So Arthur Andersen, great place to start. I was in Silicon Valley, had all tech clients, and this was in the early and mid 90s. Just a great place to work. Such great people, terrific camaraderie. And I got pulled in industry, went to a digital video semiconductor company. And that was absolutely tremendous, because everything was up and to the right. We had 99% of the world's share of digital video compression and decompression. So it was pretty fabulous. So I got a chance to meet even more great people, and really just kind of be surrounded by tech. And that was really interesting, because I got a lot of exposure, not only to the books, but also to all the technology that we were using at the time. And obviously we're adopting all sorts of different, software as we were growing. So it's the opportunity to partner with not only the business side and the finance side, but also the IT side. That was a major opportunity for me, working for a tech company.
So as you're doing this, obviously you're going to transition at some point to considering having your own company. What was that pivot? Why go from what you're describing as great people, camaraderie, obviously in kind of the fast-paced Silicon Valley environment. Why'd all of a sudden say, hey, I'm going to break out on my own and start my own company?
I think the idea there, Roger, is, I was surrounded by a bunch of tech friends and they were starting to really build some great tools. And it just so happened that very few tools that we were using in accounting at that time were any good. So I remember being at a Norwest Ventures CFO roundtable, and we were sitting around with a bunch of other CFOs who all with well-funded companies, plenty of money to spend. But the universal conclusion around the table was a lot of stuff we're using today just doesn't work well, doesn't work like you'd expect it to. And obviously, the people who are building it didn't have much accounting experience, right? And it's important to note that this was in 2008, and the number of great online accounting products out there were much fewer. Frankly, QBO at that time was awful. Xero probably wasn't even a flicker in Roger's mind at that time, right? and so if you think about it, we're just talking to some friends saying, what if we could bring a lot of the Silicon Valley tech that we know to the accounting profession, and this would be the killer, and make it affordable for everybody. And that's when I decided to start my second career.
All right. So the transition from accounting to tech, how did it go?
Well, here's the deal, Roger. I probably consider myself a great person to talk to about what not to do. I think I probably made just about every non-fatal mistake in the book, right? Some pretty near misses out there, but most of the big lessons I learned were really about being overly optimistic, right? And really not being pessimistic enough at the same time. And I think that's what a lot of us, all of us who've struck out to create businesses, and it's like we're optimists by heart. And I think I tend to be a 99% optimistic and maybe 1% pessimistic by nature. And so if I see a business model that works on a spreadsheet, I'll look at it and say, wow, this is great. What can go wrong, right?
Yeah.
So to kind of apply that lens over and over. And I think it's always a good idea to keep the optimism, right? That's the majority share. But put a little more pessimism in there, really prepare. And like Ronald Reagan said famously, trust, but verify, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So follow your instincts, follow your business model at the same time, but really pour your time into everything around your people, right? Make sure you surround yourself with really good people. Don't hire too quickly. We always want to take a look at a lot of candidates before hiring. Make sure you find at least 5 people you like. That's going to give you a chance to compare and contrast what you're really going to be, the people you're really going to be working with, right? You want to pick the very best out of a broader set. Same thing with like promoting too quickly. I think, make sure the long-term fit is there. When you're small, you can do a lot of different things. You can give away titles and so forth. But what happens 1, 2, and 3 years down the road if the growth and the progress isn't there, right? And I think as a founder, entrepreneur, you can always cover a lot of the gaps. But if you build the company and the company's culture around you're filling the gaps, you're going to end up with a 60-hour work week. And that part's never fun. And that's a trap I kept on walking into over and over and over.
So these lessons that you're sharing, I think they're actually quite important, because you started by mentioning you had a business plan and on paper it looked good. And oftentimes I'm very pleased to hear that people have these plans that are kind of written down, they're scoped out, they're looked at on paper, because honestly, like you described, on paper, it all makes sense. You put it all on paper, you write it out, you do the forecasting, you run the numbers, and everything is kind of flawless. Well, if you can make it look great there's hope. But the reality of it is there's going to be these challenges that come in, things that are unexpected. And being the optimists like we are, we lean on our passion and enthusiasm for everything working seamlessly as we expect. And it never goes that way. But it's that business plan and that optimism that helps us push through the challenges as they arrive. But the lessons you shared were obviously hiring right, surrounding yourself with competent, capable people. You talked about promoting slowly. I thought that was an interesting statement, only because of the fact that I think you do tend to promote from within and kind of reward the people that are going the extra mile at the beginning. But honestly, are they going to be the right person when the company's grown and 3 years down the line? Are they still the right person in that role, or have they maybe outgrown their capabilities and some change needs to occur there? So I like that point. We may need to come back to that. And then with regards to business, there is this idea of you're leading it, so you've got to definitely be in a position of adapting and trying to be the leader with vision. So let me ask this: with Liscio, you started the business. It was obviously meant to offer a technology platform for accounting professionals to kind of put their technology stack upon and in a central place manage it. But as you're looking at this through the lens of an accounting perspective, you're seeing it as an accounting professional. What did you miss? What were some of the things that you didn't necessarily expect, but yet became very important that you address?
Well, when building this company, and every company I think that I've ever been part of and seen, it's all about how do you grow and how do you grow quickly, right? And so you got a great business plan. Everything looks good on paper, and everybody's got a plan until they get, as Mike Tyson said, until they get punched in the face, right? So there you are. You got your business plan, and we had one for Liscio, and we looked at it and said, this is going to be great. It's going to be easy, yada, yada, yada. People are going to buy for these reasons. And then you start to learn from the audience. And what we learned was you can go in the market with a premium product, the great no idea, but there's always a lot of education you have to do around anything. So if you're selling a product or a service, the question is, why you? Why now? How do I make sure that this is going to be a sure thing for me? And a lot of the markets, a lot of people that we're selling into have established relationships, or they tend to be late adopters and so forth. So the business results don't always match up with expectations right out of the gates. So you have to keep on working on having this proposition that is sufficiently differentiated. When I mean sufficiently differentiated, I mean meaningful differentiated from the rest of the pack. Otherwise, it's a race to the bottom on price, or it's too slow growth on the top line. And you got to keep on working on all the aspects around each of those functions until you start to see the revenue rise. And that's something that is just a common denominator in everything, at least that I've been involved with.
So one of the things that we say here, and I think you've just talked to it, is the fact that you want to focus on nothing happening until you make a sale. And until you make that sale, you're really not in business because you don't have a paying customer. So you've got a great product, you've got a good offering, but nothing happening until you make that sale is, I think, the focal point of it all. And that's what I heard you say. So you mentioned one, really paying attention to your audience and learning how to best educate them and really give them an understanding of why your service, why you're different than others. When you're going through that process, is it surveys that you're doing? How do you listen to your potential audience to assess their needs and adapt your sales message to meet that?
It's a conversation. It's always a conversation. You could be selling a service, a product, anything in between. It's the idea, and people talk a lot about product market fit out there, whatever that means. I think a lot of these books come out and say, look, you're not really ready until you know how to speak to your audience and what you're saying is resonating.
Yeah.
And that's really tough to do. You can do surveys, you read a lot of articles and so forth, but for your chosen market, you're going to want to get out there and make the phone calls or send the emails, whatever it's going to be to get the conversation started. Then once you have the conversation started, you want to be as good of a listener, at least, as you are of a pitch person. Listen for their pain points, listen to what they're really saying, and don't be in a rush to get your story out there. Hear their story, maybe ask them interrogative questions and so forth, learn more about how they really think about things. And along the way, if you can go ahead and essentially make some proposals that allow them to sell themselves on what you're offering, you start to get there. Now, you might not have what they're asking for. The proposals you're making might not be what your services are today, but at least you're learning what is likely to work in those cases when you come across those scenarios. And that can make materially important changes to the packages, the bundles, the pricing structures, all the things that help you make the sales that you need in order to thrive.
Yeah. What you're describing is something I literally just experienced yesterday. Being the president of a company, I'm oftentimes marketed to and people try to sell services. And I'm always intrigued at what they're offering, but more importantly, how they're offering it, how they're putting me through this sales cycle and educating me to their product or service. And I bring this up because coincidentally, we were doing a sales training inside of our company yesterday. So here I am teaching the salespeople our methodology of interacting with our potential customers, how we listen, how we need to be asking questions, just as you're describing the process. And then after the meeting, I got into a sales presentation with a salesperson of another company, and they're trying to educate me to their product and service. And it was fascinating to just assess the conversation through the lens of, here's the sales process as I prefer to experience it. Here's what they're doing wrong. And I could literally feel the choke going on. He was just being obstinate as a salesperson, and I was just trying to kind of nurture the conversation. And he finally figured out what was happening, and it really changed the dynamic. And he all of a sudden became a lot more willing to listen to me as the customer. And that was kind of an interesting experience. So I liked how you've described it, because as we're working with small business owners, are we truly listening to their needs? Are we paying attention to what their pains are as business owners? And as accounting professionals, are we able to meet those needs and offer solutions, getting the customer timely information? Are we able to give them the financial reports in a way that they can understand them and use them to make important business decisions in their companies? Are we, as accounting professionals, help them not only deal with the history, but also the real-time numbers of the company today, and help them see how they're impacting future decisions moving forward? There's a lot of dynamics that we as accounting professionals need to be sensitive to. And when we listen to the customer, the business owner, we can better meet their needs. So let's talk about Lissio for a minute. Obviously, you've grown a great business. What makes your service stand out and really apply to the needs of an accounting professional? Why should an accountant be familiar with Lissio?
Well, I think if we kind of peel everything back, everybody gets sold to, right? We're all getting sold to 100 different solutions, et cetera. And I think in the accounting profession, if we break down what we're seeing and look at all the pitches we get in a day, how much are we seeing from the software space that has to do with making your clients, how much of it has to do with making your clients really happy versus just doing the work? And so I think we can all probably name 50 systems for getting back office work done. But how many can you name? How many software packages can you name that you're going to put out there that are going to get your clients excited about working with you in particular? Mm-hmm. So let me ask you a rhetorical question here. Outside of accountants, what other businesses invest so much in their back office and so little in their client experience? And so many of the firms we meet still are doing work with clients using paper, U.S. Postal Service, in-office drop-offs, right? And how well is that going to work with a whole new generation? I think the millennials are already the largest working segment in America, and they know apps, right? And so a lot of firms, a lot of traditional firms that have been in business for decades, they're just going to keep on acting like email is good enough. And they're not going to be pushing and rethinking about email's limitations, right? They've been patching around them for a long time. You need a large document set. What do? Well, you go out and you buy a document exchange tool. And then somebody says, well, I don't want to send my social security number over email. So then you buy a secure messaging system or an encryption tool. And then a client wants to text, and then suddenly you're texting, and then you need to get something signed. You have an e-signature platform. So what's happening is, firms they keep on patching around problems. And the next thing you know, you got links flying around all over the place. Email's a mess. There's suddenly a bunch of silos of information. There's a pretty big, set of bills coming out of the credit card statement. So there's a lot of stuff happening there that just really doesn't make a ton of sense. And if we bring all that back and say, look, is that a good client experience? Is that helping us grow our customer base? The answer is going to be almost certainly no, right? So if we bring it back and say, if customer experience is really the battleground, and we know the most successful businesses are growing because they're great with clients. You think about airlines and so forth. You have a great airline, everybody's going to fly it, right? But people aren't as focused on CX. So we think about, once you have a great client experience in the water, you get benefits from what we call the 3 R's: referrals, retention, and reviews. And so since most accountants, I think we by nature probably hate to sell, right? We hate to sell. So word of mouth is king for most firms. In fact, we sent out a survey, Roger, to a bunch of our clients a couple of years ago, and 9 out of 10 said that referrals were the number one source of their growth. Uh-huh. So great client experience, more referrals. That brings us to the second R. Once you have the clients, you need to retain them. If you retain them, you're doing something right. So what about the next step? Well, why not delight them to the point where they start to leave you more online reviews? another great way to spin up passive growth, if you will. It's a great business model, and that's the power of great CX. So that's what we want to do. We want to help firms change the game.
So one of the things that I heard there, as you're doing the 3 Rs and so forth, is something similar to what we talk about when we're helping accounting professionals understand how technology can help them as they're working with their clients and doing the work that they do. And we break it down into 3 areas. The first being, I think the business owner, they're an expert in their own industry. They know what their business is. But oftentimes, if you're an accounting professional attending conferences, if you're going out and becoming familiar with what other technologies are out there, you'll typically find that there are some that you as the accounting professional can bring to the attention of your client, the owner of the business, and share with them something that literally could make their business that much better using and introducing them to this technology. And so you become kind of this business strategic advisor, if you will, introducing them to things that may help them collect information, gather data. And if you're helping them that way, it just naturally can feed over into the accounting model, because what we're trying to do is really help with inventories. We're trying to help with ROIs. And once that data is coming in, we can literally help point things out and help manage the business a little bit better. So there's that first element of industry-specific technologies that we can bring to the forefront. Well, the second thing is, how does that information then bridge over into the accounting world that we're in? And what we want to find some way to bridge that information over. And as we bridge it over, we're going to be able to organize that data into information that is now relevant and it's useful in making decisions. And our job is to now present that information to the business owner in a way that it makes sense, in a way that they're able to use it to make more informed, intelligent business decisions in their company. But the third happens to be, we in the back office want to understand how we can leverage technology to do our work, our business, more efficiently. The more efficient we can be on the back end doing the accounting work ensures the profitability of the services we're providing. And so when you're looking at it with those 3 lenses, we're able to say, okay, here's a technology that I could consider using as an accounting professional. Does it meet the first objective? Does it help my client gather information about their business that they can use more intelligently? Second, does it bridge well to the accounting that I do? For example, if I use QuickBooks, does that other software integrate well within QuickBooks, let's say, since you brought up QBO earlier? And then lastly, does this technology actually help me do what I'm doing now easier, more efficiently? Does it bring an additional resource or a revenue stream to my business model because I'm able to offer additional reports or additional information that the client could eventually pay for? If I'm looking at it through those 3 qualifiers, I can easily assess then, is this technology worth paying for, worth learning, worth implementing within the firm? And those questions, I think, become very, very important. Your services, Licio, then help actually manage that, as I understand it, kind of create that platform for the use. Is that a fair assessment of it?
I think so, Roger. And one thing I'm noticing as we're talking here, you bring up a lot of great points about being genuinely interested in the client's business. If you're genuinely listening, if you're genuinely paying attention and actively thinking about the client, you're able to go to these conferences, see new technology, and imagine how you'd apply that in specific client instances, right? Yep. And so it's not just selling a client on the idea of working with you, but it's about actually actively listening and continuing to service clients once you have them. And I think that's the hallmark, right? So if we take that and extend that to this idea of client experience, what we would do is imagine what clients are going through today. And if we think about a lot of the questions that keep on coming up for accountants every day, every week, every month, they're going to be things such as a client will come in and say, I can't find that file. Can you resend it? Or is it safe to click that link? Or I didn't check my email. If we're really thinking about these things, and these are such common problems that we're probably numb to them anyway, but if you really think about what's happening here, it means the client isn't really organized. and the client isn't really sure about how you're working with them, how you're communicating with them. And when that's the case, it tends to slow things down, because if we take that as a hypothesis and say, well, thought experiment, how much faster could we get our work done if we could sit down with all the information we need from the client right there in front of us?
Mm-hmm.
Right? How much time are we spending picking up work and putting it down? How much time are we spending chasing clients to get another document? Or how much time are we spending sending, resending documents to clients, right? And what clients want, and they're telling us in, via the questions they're asking, is we're not making things simple enough. So we learned a couple secrets along the way. Number one, clients live on their phones. No surprise. We can't drive anywhere in America without seeing our neighbor, punching away on their smartphone while they're driving, right? We don't advocate that, but it's what's happening, right? So that's one. Another one is clients can't juggle, right? So if the client's asking you to resend something because they can't find it, it means you're probably, either working in an environment where they can't be successful, or there's too many apps, something along those lines. And I think we all have a sneaking suspicion that we as accountants aren't always at the top of the priority list. I remember when I was CFO of the company, I knew I was behind the VP of sales, the VP of marketing, and the VP of product engineering, right? I was best friends with the VP of ops. We weren't revenue, and we kind of knew our place in the pecking order. So what do you do when the pecking order doesn't work for you? Well, you change the game, right? If we want to get answers from clients, if we want to be first in line, we get out of email. We don't compete for attention alongside everything else in their inbox. Instead, we give them a secure, online, organized experience where we're the star, we're the focus, right? And when we start to do that, the productivity comes. We send them a message, they don't get distracted, they respond quickly. We put everything where they can find it later in one place where it's super organized. They don't call in with that next question. All that frees up really valuable time for us, while at the same time creating this halo around our service, because the clients know they're successful. They know this is the best way they've ever worked with a service provider of theirs. And that creates that virtuous cycle.
So when you're describing all that, I'm thinking of what I do as I'm working with our clients, and I can relate to it in the following. When you're first onboarding a client, there is this experience, the new customer experience, and they're trying to learn how this is going to be as they interact with you as that service provider. Well, with us, the onboarding experience oftentimes involves learning a little bit about their business, educating them as to how to best communicate. Somebody may be leaning towards email. I prefer email. Someone else, hey, the easiest way to reach me is by text. And what you're describing is we need to educate them and introduce them to a new dashboard experience, a center place that they can be going to run their business. And more importantly, it's through that we can do the project management. And while we transition to client to then recognize that this is the be all end all of how they're going to be running their business, get the information they need, be able to access the information that they're needing to find, all of a sudden that becomes so critical and essential in their business. And if you're communicating within that, all of a sudden this becomes the lifeline to their business, and they see it as essential for them to be successful. So what you're providing then becomes then the new norm. It's what they will in time gravitate to and become dependent upon. And then there's your client retention. They're not going to want to abandon this experience, this interface. They don't want to now change their business because they become so reliant and dependent upon this new experience that you're now a part of. And so as an accounting professional, getting the client to now embrace this new experience, hopefully you can make it both sexy and fun. All of a sudden now they like it. They want that dashboard. They want that project management experience. And now all of a sudden they're in a situation where technology isn't scary or intimidating. It's something that they're eager and looking forward to because it's there. They're getting the information they need to be ahead of the game, to be more spontaneous and interactive with their company. I like how that sounds. I like how you're describing that experience. So that's good. Let me.
Yeah, I'll give you one more piece on that.
Yeah.
It's already happening.
Yeah.
It's banking. Imagine if we're Bank of America, right? So Roger, you and I are running Bank of America. We're the only ones that have a mobile app. Chase doesn't have a mobile app or a great online experience. They're still using email. Wells Fargo still using email, et cetera. Imagine if that were the case in the marketplace. Because everybody, if you use online banking, it's really good. It's really safe. It's all there. everybody's been successful with for the last decade.
Yeah,
So that model's already out there. So why don't we do that as accountants? It's literally that simple.
exactly. I like that analogy. Thank you. Yeah, let me go ahead and break away here. I want to do a quick mention for our sponsors and share some things here that our listeners need to take advantage of and be aware of. With regards to our sponsors, the first is that of Universal Accounting Center. Universal Accounting Center, what we're basically offering here today is the opportunity for you to get a free copy of the book Red to Black. Red to Black in 30 days. It's a small business accountant's guide to quick turnarounds. It's literally the how-to guide that you need as an accounting professional to work with your clients as their profit and growth expert. It helps you address the most common need or frustration that many business owners face today, which is cash flow management. As an accounting professional, this is the tool you need in order to guide you through the process of helping your clients understand how best to turn their businesses around and go from red to black. And I invite you to get your free copy of the book today and do your part as an accounting professional to help the business owners where it matters most with cash flow. Second of all, with Liscio, we actually have some information here for you to learn about their services and find out how you can apply this technology in your business and literally help what it is you're doing, not only for your own company, but those of your clients. And use Liscio as a platform to literally manage your business more efficiently and effectively, leveraging the technology stacks that are out there. Now, with that being said, I do have some more questions for you, Chris, because I know as a business owner, you're running a company. You've got a lot of things going on. You're, like many business owners, juggling various needs, long-term, short-term demands. I'm just kind of curious, do you have a mantra or a guiding principle that you use as a business owner to run your company and stay on top of the things that you're challenged with?
Oh, I think that the mantra is always one thing. You're going to spend a lot of time, with the people you work with, and you want to have a great professional relationship with them. And I think if you can find enough time, because everybody's be crazy busy. We all know how much work it is to grow and to launch and grow a successful business. But if you can carve out a little bit of time to think about your people, to put yourself in their shoes, and to find ways to make them as effective and efficient and happy as possible, right? Because there's going to be waves in a business. And if you can go ahead and make sure that as you're riding those waves together as a team, that everybody stays in the boat, that there's some harmony there, everybody's pulling super hard, and everybody's getting recognized for doing that. I think that tends to help really balance the load to defray the work from you, right, as much as you can. And if you can do that, I think you got a successful formula. So the mantra is always people, people, people.
I like it. I like it. So you brought up earlier your mother and father. What are some important business lessons you learned from your mother, maybe your grandmother that you mentioned, and your father?
Sure. My mom, it was really interesting growing up with her because it was mostly, she owned the store by herself, and I would go there after school and, help her with the product. It was a small store, maybe 1,000 square feet. And we were selling health foods back in the 1970s. So she was selling health foods, right? So not popular,
Wow.
way before Whole Foods. And the register wasn't ringing much. And she really stuck with it. And as the trends changed and so forth, it became more in vogue. Business started to increase, et cetera. And my mom always kind of kept it really small because, she was really picky about the information we were providing to customers. She wanted to make sure they got the very best advice and so forth. And she could never, because of that, because her standards are so high, she could never hire anybody and scale. So she worked that business with an occasional part-time employee, but she worked that business for 40 something years without ever really hiring, and working 6 days a week. Store opened at 10, closed at 7, 6 days a week. We didn't have family vacations or anything like that. So the lesson there was you got to find a way to maintain your standards, set your professional standard. What's the organizational standard that you want to uphold? Help bring people up to that standard, make them happy and retain them. And then that gives you a chance to, get a 2-day weekend at least. So that was an important lesson there. I think on the other side with my dad was always busy creating. It was always that crazy optimism. I can go do this, I can do that. And, he went on to start several other businesses with varying levels of success, but he never gave up. He really persevered. Stuff got tough. He always saw the good. He never harbored really any anger or resentment that I could tell, other than that one night with regard to what happened in his businesses. He just said, look, take it to the limit one more time, right? Let's do this. And he kept his head up, kept punching.
Love it. Love it. Chris, having you on the show today, I think was really helpful because you've done a lot to help, I think, get the perspective of the business owner as well as the importance of the accounting profession. And I think you gave some insights to technology and how it can literally be a help to the profession and why we should be embracing it. So let me do this. I'm going to wrap a few things up here. I'm going to come back to you for a quick summary of your thoughts, a closing thought, but I wanted to just kind of recap some of the things that I took from our conversation and then also mention something of our sponsors. The sponsor, again, is Universal Accounting Center, giving you a chance to get a copy of the book Red to Black, the how-to guide for accounting professionals to help turn businesses around, addressing the most common need that they face, and which happens to be cash flow management. And then the other is your opportunity to check out more of Liscio and the services that are available to help you leverage technology and actually, as an accounting professional, have a platform in which you can use this to your benefit and run your business more efficiently. In the descriptions of the podcast, you'll actually find for this episode a description that lists these links and the information you need to get a copy of the book Red to Black, as well as this information regarding Liscio. So I invite you to go to the episode description and there find the information you're needing to click on and go get these two things available today. The recap that I'd like to share is, I think Chris very intelligently saw within the accounting profession how technology could really become a part of the future. And years ago, as an accounting professional working with Arthur Andersen, was exposed to, I think, some opportunities that he was able to latch onto and really put some energy behind and build the business that he has, which is Liscio. And the part that I like about it is oftentimes as accounting professionals, time and time again, I'm having conversations where, because of our opportunities and what we get to see within businesses, sometimes there are things that we can embrace, just kind of latch onto and literally run with. And I encourage you to keep your eyes open to those opportunities. You're going to see things as the accounting professional that may not be apparent to everyone else. And so opportunities will inevitably present themselves where you can invest in and maybe take off and run new businesses. That's something that's exciting. But with regards to Chris, he gave some great insights about lessons regarding running a business, getting the right people, having key people in your organization, being careful as to the promotions that you actually give and looking at those promotions through the long-term lens. Are they in fact going to be the right people 3 years, 5 years down the line? Those were some great pieces of advice. And then our conversation about basically the role of accounting professionals, in the sense that we have, as auditors, if you will, the chance to really help business owners avoid some of the problems that can arise through fraud and negligence, and really help them understand as business owners how to best protect the cash flow assets that are going on in the company. So great insights. What final thoughts might you have, Chris?
Well, in the spirit of sharing, I'd like to first of all, thank you, Roger, for this opportunity to spend some time with you and your audience. I think for me, it's the idea that we can learn and listen as a group, right? So if there's anything that anybody in the audience would ever want to talk about, if you're going through something and you think there might be some help, or you want to kind of bounce something off of anybody, I'm happy to make myself available for what that's worth. We do talk to a lot of accountants out there. I talk to a dozen or two every week. And I'd be happy to share what we're seeing in terms of best practices, ideas, anything on forming, growing, scaling a business. We're working with everybody from a solopreneur all the way up to firms to a couple hundred people. So if you ever want a sounding board or want to reach out, I want to give you my email address. It's Chris, CHRIS, at Liscio, LISCIO.me. It'll be great to hop on a Zoom sometime, get to know some more people, and share some stories.
I love it. Thank you for that. I really think that giving attitude is very generous, and I really feel that many people will actually benefit from that, and I appreciate you extending it. Thank you. Let me just wrap things up here. And first of all, encourage you to listen to our other episodes and be sure to subscribe to this podcast, Building the Premier Accounting Firm, to get the tips and tricks that you're needing in order to apply these principles in your business. I also invite you to get more information on how you can apply these principles in your company by also visiting us at universalaccountingschool.com or giving us a phone call at 801-265-3777. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care.